Week 9 is upon us. The temperatures continue to drop, but the stakes ramp up. Welcome back into Countdown to Kickoff, where we get you ready for the game. I'm Kutis Quillin, joined by the head coach of the Copperas Cove Bulldawgs, Tony Johnson, as we preview the Dogs matchup with Shoemaker. Coach, thanks for taking some time to chat with us.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Let's start with the Harker Heights game last week. The score will obviously look one way, but what did you see from your guys that you really liked against a team that right now is in the driver's seat for the district title?
Yeah, Harker Heights is a well-coached, great football team, and, we thought we could play with them. And opening drive, if you were at the game, we took 7.5 minutes off the clock and drove down and didn't get points. And that's, if you remember from last week, I said we have to finish drives. And so not doing that was painful because we were trying to help get our defense, limited field opportunities, and we certainly did that offensively, but to come away with no points there really set the tone for a bad spot at that crucial moment in time. Proud of the way our kids fought and battled and tried, but I think there was too many times where we were trying to do a check with me system, which we have not done all year. Check with me was good for us in practice all week, and there are times in the game where offensive coordinator, head coach, quarterback, receivers, I think all of us could have been better at getting the check with me in and getting those plays off quicker. But, I was proud of the kids and their fight, for sure.
On the offensive side, that opening drive didn't get the results you wanted. Defensively, though, the first drive they were on the field, a 3-and-out after a 7.5-minute drive. You guys had to be feeling pretty good at that point.
Well, again, we switched I didn't say anything last week, but we switched our defense around, ran a different front because we've had too many injuries to play what we have been playing. We're not good enough on the front to stay in a 3-man, 3-4 box. So we went to a 4-man box. I think that caused them some issues. Credit them for adjusting and making the changes that they needed to change. But I think that helped get us into that situation to get them off the field. So probably the fastest half I've ever been a part of in a football game. I mean, we were in the locker room at like 8:27 at halftime. It was crazy to be that fast.
Looking forward now, 3 games left against 3 teams currently in the playoff picture, but you guys are still there as well. 3 games left, and you can go 2-1 in this stretch and find yourself playing on November 15th. What is the message in the locker room right now? Because even after the result being what it was, everything's still in front of you guys to get on that playoff bracket, and once you're on it, anything can happen.
Sure. I mean, absolutely. What you're holding right there is exactly what we put up in the locker room and what we put up in our Monday team meeting. And so, you can clearly see that the next 3 teams that you play are all one step ahead of you. So it's a pick-off thing, right? You want to pick them off one at a time. So everything they want is still right there in front of them and something to fight for and play for. And I think that leads to good, solid practices and commitment. And nobody kind of, it's football. They don't have that mentality. It's a great senior group of kids that have done a phenomenal job all year. So, that's what we started off with Monday, was looking at that and saying, Harker Heights is clearly the clear-cut favorite by who they've played, et cetera. At this point, everything else is still up for grabs. You'd be 2, 3, 4 out.
This is, you ignore the opponents at this point. To get back into that top 4 by the end of week 11, that midway game to close the season, what will it take for the Bulldogs to be among that top 4?
Well, we've got to find a way. Like, it seems like a broken record. We got to find a way to play consistent defense that not giving up 40-plus points a game. And it's hard to do when you're beat up, which they are, and we've got more bad news this morning. So we're trying to play a lot of younger kids there, as you know, and we're going to have even more young kids having to step up. So, for us, we got to play better defense, better special teams, and be more consistent. I thought offensively where we've been able to, and we can, we're able to score at will at times. I think the change in terms of trying to be running too many check with me's last week, I think kind of go back to what we were doing and being more disciplined with that, with the eye candy and stuff, and less motion on just play football.
As far as you mentioned, leadership, a big part of these last 3 weeks against Shoemaker, Midway, Temple, who take up that middle spot of the standings that we were just talking about. Has there been anybody else who's emerged as a leader for you guys, or has it been the usual suspects that we've talked about already this season?
I mean, I think it's the usual suspects, right? I mean, it's the same kids. It's the same core group of kids that have done a great job all year leading them. So I haven't lost anybody in that regard. That's just kind of, Mike Dennis might be a name I'd throw out there. He's been really somebody that's had a great. You mentioned leadership. He's been somebody that's been more vocal as of late. So good for him. As a younger player on our offensive line, and then he plays a lot of special teams for us. But I would say the leaders that are there are doing a great job. But Mike Dennis would be someone that stands out to me.
Up next, we'll dive into the matchup between the Bulldogs and the opponent this week. It's the Shoemaker Greywolves. This is Countdown to Kickoff from Bulldog Radio. We're back on Countdown to Kickoff, where we get you set for the game. We're previewing Copperas Cove's matchup in District 12-6A against the Shoemaker Greywolves tonight. Curtis Quillin alongside the head coach of the Bulldogs, Tony Johnson. And let's talk about the matchup between the Bulldog offense and the Greywolf defense tonight. And this is a defense that, surprise, surprise, Shoemaker's got athletes, but this time, this might be one of the more physical defenses Shoemaker's had since Toby Foreman came to West Killeen 8 years ago.
Yeah, I mean, it's base 4-3 defense, and they have a lot of athletes on defense that move around. Obviously, the guy that stands out to us the most is number 55, Jamon Sanders, 6 foot, 310 pounds. I think he's heavier. They might be listing his weight at 310 to help him. I don't know, but I think he's heavier than that. Very physical than he is taller. So he's a load in there, kind of like the kid that was at Heights that we were so worried about last week, number 97. But Jamon Sanders, the other kid I like that's been popping on film to me is, like I told you earlier, Torian Thomas. He's little, but he strikes you very much like tackle bond for us. Don't let his size fool you, and he's at safety. But no, they have a very good front. James Evans, number 22, is 5'9", but he's a scrappy corner. Great cover corner. Does a good job, very athletic, not afraid to come downhill. I think you'll see that on film. And then the other kid that's kind of caught our attention is Brendan Logan, number 11, outside linebacker, plays downhill and runs very well as well also. But he's also able to drop into coverage, which, is something, we have to take advantage of. What I like is, offensively, statistically, when you start going through the stats, we're 2 or 3 in most offensive categories throughout. As you go through the district stats, we're 2 or 3 offensively, and they're sitting at 2 or 3 defensively. So it's like, okay, this is a good matchup. It's going to be a good battle for it's good versus good. It's always good versus good. But it's
best unit on best unit.
Best unit on best unit. So we've been challenging our offensive linemen all week with that, and we like what we have, and we like what our chances are.
Do you feel like your offensive line has taken the steps that they've needed to this season? I mean, it seemed to me like they played one of their better games Friday night against Harker Heights.
Our quarterback is, throwing for over 260 yards and having a great year. And while we didn't run the ball as much because we were behind so much, that, running the ball wasn't as strong last week, but we've ran the ball well all year long. That O-line has played well. What I want to see out of them, what my charge to them on Monday was, when I'm watching film, I see things differently than maybe the people are seeing on Friday night. Like, I don't need to see the center block back on a 3, block him for 2 seconds, and then turn around and see how the quarterback's doing. Your job is to not to see what he's doing. Your job is to find someone else. If you can't block that one, block someone else. Like, to play through the whistle. I thought we had too much of that last Friday, so I've kind of put that charge on them. And they're a great group. Those 5 kids take coaching as well as anybody I've ever been around. So they're a great group of kids, and we just got to get them playing lower, hat on a hat, and finishing blocks through the whistle, especially in pass protection.
Without giving away your game plan, offensive line is the unit in the offense that you need to see the most out of. Scheme-wise, what's the biggest key for you guys against a defense like this?
Again, I think it goes kind of similar to last week. I think sustain drives and come away with points and be solid in terms of balance, being able to run and throw like we were. That if you could take that opening drive from a week ago and do that every time, well, man, that'd be pretty awesome. But that's the mindset that we've got to have is what we did on that opening drive. That's what we're looking for, is that balance.
When you look at Anthony King and you see KJ Ziegler and you see just the offensive backfield this year, you include everybody who's taken snaps back there. How important is it for them to all be on the same page, to all do the stuff that you may not watch between snap and whistle. How important is that whenever you've got just 3 games left to make all of the goals for this season happen?
I mean, it's super important that those kids are on the same page. We spend an enormous amount of time during the week making sure that, the B receiver and the X receiver understand on this formation they're on the left, and then on this formation they're on the right, and then you're signaling in, and then you're, like I said earlier, you're trying to run a check with me because you see the defense. And then once they've identified their defense, you want to check it to a different play so that you can attack the defense where they're most vulnerable. And so we lacked a little bit of that last week, but that's also on coaches, because we got to do a better job of putting them in those situations where it's, in faster, getting turned in faster. At halftime, it was pink out night, so cancer awareness game. And so we had a black shirt on with pink lock in. Well, at halftime, all the receivers are like, we can't see the signals as clearly as we have all year. Well, that would have been good to know after the first series that we went, because the sun is still out in the first series. But when it got dark, they were having a hard time. We needed to know. We could have liked to have known. So if you noticed in the second half, my 2 main signalers were in blue. And so we made them switch shirts. And then this week I'm going to have them in bright yellow so that, they can see and there's nothing that could potentially be detrimental to our team. But, yeah, it's super important that those kids are on the same page. And for the most part, they have been. That group of kids that you mentioned are playing great. And I'd throw Glass and Miller. Glass is over 900 yards receiving. It's close to 1,000 yards. That's incredible. The running backs have, like I said, we didn't really feature our running backs a lot because we got behind so quickly last week. But, when they're hot, it's a pretty sneaky, nasty 1-2 punch with those 2 guys as well. And King showed great poise in running the ball. Is
that his best dual threat game in your opinion?
No, I think I've told a college coach this. I think his better football is still ahead of him. That's the thing. He's pretty dang good. He's statistically in the top. He's pretty good. Like, there were some zone reads early where he made the wrong read and he didn't pull it, and he probably would have scored or at least had another long run. But when the pocket breaks down, that's when he's the most dangerous because he doesn't have to think about it. It's instinctual. So if it's a zone read, I think he has to think about it. But he's going to grow into that. This is his first year starting on varsity, and he's done a phenomenal job. But you're going to hear about that kid, later on after high school, because he's going to get in whatever program he goes to, and he's going to have nothing but year-round quarterback training, year-round watching film. There's not going to be critical. You got to go to school all day and not have time for meetings and things like that. He's going to be dynamic. I think he's better football's ahead of him.
Perfect. Well, up next, we'll dive into the other side of the football. We'll look at the Bulldog defense against the Shoemaker offense. This is Countdown to Kickoff from Bulldog Radio. Back on Countdown to Kickoff, where we get you set for the game. Tonight's matchup is the Copperas Cove Bulldawgs and the Shoemaker Greywolves, another District 12 6A matchup. Curtis Quillin alongside the head coach of the Dogs. It's Tony Johnson. And, Coach, let's look at the Bulldog defense against the Shoemaker offense. And when you play a team that is always this athletic, what kind of challenges does that present, and how have y'all gone about addressing it? It's not the first time y'all have played an offensive unit with this kind of talent on it, this kind of speed, but it's certainly a little bit different than when you've got giant offensive lines coming at you.
Well, I've scouted them, and then, of course, you look at film, right? So I've scouted them in person. I've looked at film, and, yes, they do have some really extremely talented young men, starting with the quarterback, who his identity is when the pocket breaks down, run, right? And so, you try to think to yourself, okay, do we spy him? Do we trigger him? Do we blitz him? What do we do, right? He's electric when he has to run. And his game, much like Anthony's, is he wants to run and find someone to throw to, which, secondary sees quarterback scrambling, and it's instinct. They break down. They know they have to come up and really, really work this week about maybe need to stay in phase, guys, and make sure that he's taken off, because the moment you come up, he does a great job of distributing the ball to a guy that's now 15 yards behind you and wide open. We think the matchup for us that looks good for us is their O-line versus our D-line. And so that's the first time I think I've ever said that in here. So this will be a chance that our front, if we can get them going, it's not as big of an O-line as we've faced, but that doesn't mean they're not good. They're littler and they're athletic, but number 2 is the back, and he's primarily been a wide receiver, but he's played the most significant snaps in the backfield with number 3. But get your eye on 8. I mean, eight's the key to this game, right? The big tight end who's already got a scholarship offer. They play him at H-back. They move him around. He's really, I talked to the future college coach the other day, said that kid's going to be a tackle. I don't know if they've told him that, but they're like, we're moving him to tackle. And so, I mean, he's really in there. He will sneak out and catch football. That's a kid I think. He will sneak out. He will sneak out from time to time, and he can hurt you. So we definitely need to be aware of him. But he's a big old guy, and for us, keeping our eye on that and being prepared for that. But I think he's primarily in there to block, if you will. But he has good hands and he's physical on blocking. So I can see why somebody would want to make him a tackle.
This is, when you look at your defense, they were the unit that was a little bit younger when the season started, and you really needed them to take some steps. They've improved each week. A 3-and-out on the opening drive against a really talented offense. What's led to them growing the way they have this season? Is it the leadership from guys like Cameron Tuiasosopo and Xavier Taclebon, or is it something else?
Well, I mean, that particular group understands that. I don't know how to say this, that, they're the piece that in a couple other games, if they'd have shored up, the game would have been different. The outcome would have been different. So I think those coaches and those players feel that, and they're great teammates. And so we had we have a leadership committee, as you know, and some of those defensive players are on that leadership committee, and they're great kids. They're not going to sit there and say, you guys aren't doing this and you need to get better. No, our offensive guys really do a good job of building them up, and we're capable of scoring 28 to 35 points every game, and we need them to tackle better. And I was happy that we made the switch. I thought the front 7 last week played better because of the switch. But now we just, we've got another, we've missed having Rion Childers there all year. Losing him was huge in the middle because he demanded a double team. And so we're just waiting for somebody to step up and to take that role on. And we haven't found that guy yet on the D-line. But you mentioned Cameron and Taclebon. They are certainly 2 of the best young men I've ever been around. They're great leaders. They're great people. Davion Phillips, I'd throw in that regard as well. But really, if you go back to the Heights game, it was our secondary again that, for whatever reason, man, because new reads, new keys in the 4-2-5. Of course, I came up through the 4-2-5 when I got to TCU as a GA. That's what Gary Patterson had invented. That became the thing that made him who he was. And so I felt like, that was something that, I could help them with, and I tried to help them with. But you saw in the game last week that it didn't work out the way we wanted with those corners and those safeties. So we've made some adjustments again, and we'll see what it looks like Friday night.
When you have a defense, defensive players in football, period, are just kind of trained to attack the ball. How important is it to you kind of touched on this, but how do you go about communicating with them? Okay, if you're a DB, if you're a safety this week, you can't be so quick to jump on the ball.
You try to mirror that in practice, right? You try to mirror that, and that's hard to do with a scout team that might be a JVB quarterback who's definitely not as athletically gifted as the kid you're going to play on Friday night. So, yeah, you try to replicate that in practice, and you show them film when those kids watch film every day, and so. Again, I think the general public thinks that, we go out and we practice and we call it a day. Those kids are watching film every day. Those kids, we log their huddle hours, and they watch film every day with their coaches. Some of them, like last week, I think I told you, our DBs spent almost 45 minutes of their own free time in the morning each day watching film. They want to be good. They want to be better. But, at the end of the day, the other team is coached too, and the other team has talented kids too, and we've just all got to help them out wherever we can and make them better.
Up next, we'll finish out Countdown to Kickoff. We'll dive into final keys as we get set for kickoff. This is Countdown to Kickoff from Bulldog Radio. Back on Countdown to Kickoff, where we get you ready for the game. Curtis Quillin alongside the head coach of the Dogs. It's Tony Johnson. If you would like to see this show taped every week, we do it Wednesdays at noon in the boardroom at the CCISD Service and Training Center that's located at 408 South Main Street. That is the CCISD boardroom at noon on Wednesday for coffee with the coach. Well, Coach, some good news for Bulldog football this week. Robert Griffin III, Heisman Trophy winner at Baylor and a Copperas Cove graduate himself, is heading into the Texas High School Football Hall of Fame up in Waco. To have an alum of the program get an honor like that, I mean, how do you guys, what does that do for a program?
I think Robert's a great, obviously a great example of leadership and commitment and hard work. I think that right there, you start there, right? Just follow the guy's career and follow what he puts out on social media and things like that. He is a guy that preaches family and preaches faith and preaches hard work and doing things the right way. So not only are we proud of him for representing Copperas Cove, but we're proud of the fact that now he takes Copperas Cove into the Texas High School Hall of Fame. So, you try to – I've only met him one time, so, I don't really have a relationship with him like that. But, we'll certainly, put something together social media-wise and get it out. But, as far as picking up the phone or calling and congratulating him, I don't have that ability to do that. We have coaches on our staff that do, and I'm sure they will, and they'll give our regards. But it's certainly something we do talk about. We talk about all the greats that have come through here a lot of times, and some of those guys will send messages from time to time. Last year at homecoming, it was Peanut Tillman sending us a video to show the kids. So we're very lucky and blessed to have a great group of alumni that care, still care, and keep their eye on Cove.
Definitely an honor to see the school's name in the Hall of Fame. When that induction ceremony usually in March. Flipping back to the game now. You're just a few minutes from, as this is airing, from kicking off against Shoemaker. What are going to be your 3 final points to the guys before you guys run out of the tunnel and put toe to leather?
Win the line of scrimmage. That's to me, that is the key for both of us, offense and defense. This week, we've got to win the line of scrimmage, and I think we have to win the special teams battle. I think there's some points to be had in special teams this week through blocks, through block punts and things of that nature, and extra points. So we've got to be aggressive and try to do those things. I would say that offensively, execute the RPO and the gift the way it's presented to you from quarterback to receiver. So if a receiver knows he's got a certain coverage and he has to tailor his route to this, by God, I need you to do it. And no excuses. I didn't see it, and we can't have that. And quarterback reading the RPOs and delivering the RPOs, take what they give you. And then at the end of the day, win your one-on-one battle. Each play in football is a life of its own. Each play. So win that play. And don't worry about it. If you lost that play, come back to the next one, forget it, and win your one-on-one battle.
Well, Coach, thanks for chatting with us and previewing the game, and good luck tonight.
Thank you, Curtis.
For Tony Johnson, producer Cole Witter, and all of us at Bulldog Radio, thanks for listening to Countdown to Kickoff. Up after the break, we'll send you up to the booth here at Searles Stadium in Quillin, where Russ Cochran, Ben Pettit, and the crew have you covered for the action.